of the military offensive in Ukraine, as President Biden carries gift his first State of the Union address on Tuesday. White House correspondent Steve Doocy coming live from London. Hey, David.
Thanks, good afternoon. So the latest sanctions dropped last night, and then this morning we get this news that Russia is elevating their nuclear readiness. After that, I pinged the White House official who directed me to this statement that the Russians signed on to just last month. It says, we affirm that a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. But again, things could possibly change. Now, White House officials are monitoring these reports that Russia is elevating their nuclear readiness.
This is really a pattern that we've seen from President Putin through the course of this conflict, which is manufacturing threats that don't exist in order to justify further aggression. And the global community and the American people should look at it through that prism.
Rules today are considered an escalation.
I have to pull it apart. I don't
Financial punishment for Putin
Hey,
may not be
sounds
worse
good yourself.
than a sign for Republicans. Critics say, time to try something else. We talked to the president of our European partners, which is voting right now. The financial sanctions announced last night are really with loopholes. I know that they say they sanction 80% of banks in Russia, but why would Putin control 100% of banks in Russia? He can use the other 20% to continue to finance his war machine. President Biden is not here today. He is home in Delaware. The plan is for him to attend a
Test 1 2 1 2 1 2.
at some point later on this afternoon. We know that he got a briefing yesterday in the morning about the latest with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We don't have a.
There we go. Test 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Test 1 2 1 2.
Peter Doocy, thanks, live in the White House for a second. Well, Vladimir Putin escalated his threats against the West, putting Russia's nuclear forces on high alert. A former White House special assistant on what to make of that. Next.
Mass General Brigham. When you need some of the brightest minds in medicine, this is the only healthcare system in the country with 5 nationally ranked hospitals, including 2 world-renowned academic medical centers. In Boston, where biotech innovates, and our doctors teach at Harvard Medical School.
Did you eat your
And their
pizza?
physicians doing world-changing
Where's your
research
pizza?
are the ones providing care.
Why?
There's only one Mass General.
Smart news.
I was only watching news. I agree with you.
I was only getting news from social media.
Now, I use smart news.
It has news from all sides. I trust Smart News. Download Smart News for free today.
Only pay. I'm Mike Huckabee, former governor of Arkansas and 2016 presidential candidate. Like many of you, I've struggled to get a good night's sleep for most of my adult life. I wasted at least 2 hours a day of my life tossing and turning, trying to shut my mind down. Until about 2 years ago. That's when I saw an ad on TV for Relaxian Sleep. I decided to order it, and it literally changed my life. Developed by renowned neurologist and sleep expert Dr. Aaron Silverberg, Relaxian Sleep is clinically proven to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. Relaxian's exclusive triple action formula addresses 3 key factors that contribute to insomnia. I like that it's not habit forming. It's made in the USA. There's simply nothing else like it. Relaxian Sleep comes with a 100% money-back guarantee, so you have nothing to lose. In fact, they're so confident it'll work for you, they're giving away 1,000 bottles today. With Relaxian Sleep, I fall asleep as spinning my head hits the pillow. In the morning, my mind is sharp, and I've got the energy that I enjoyed when I was younger. Both my wife and I have been paying customers of Relaxian Sleep for over 2 years now. And I know once you've experienced the amazing difference it can make in your life, you will be too. I trust my
Hey, all right, it works. Just
And now, you'll be glad you did. Just relax you.
I make progress with my mental health. So when I started having unintentional body movements called tardive dyskinesia, I ignored them. But when the twitching and jerking in my face and hands affected my day to day, I finally had to say, it's not okay. It was time to talk to my doctor about Austedo. She said Austedo helps reduce these movements in adults, while I continue with my mental health medication.
Austedo can cause depression, suicidal thoughts, or actions in patients with Huntington's disease. It was functions from college doctor if you become depressed and sudden changes in mood, behaviors, feelings, or suicidal thoughts. Common side effects include inflammation of the nose and throat, insomnia, and sleepiness. Don't take Austedo if you have liver problems, taking Rescue, hyperphenazine, or valdenosine. Austedo may cause irregular or fast heartbeat, restlessness, movement spinning, Parkinson's disease, fever, stiff muscles, problems in deep sleep.
Talk to your doctor about Austedo. It's time to treat TD. TD is not okay. You can ask for Austedo.com.
Welcome back. We are coming to you live from Ukraine at the moment. We are a few hours away from the front lines from where the war is being raged. We have a number of teams across the country. I want to bring in next Lucas Tomlinson, my colleague, and also in the event coming out, reporting on the various stories. Lucas, tonight. Well, Ben, a week ago in this college town, kids were having a good time. They were studying, they were going out, they were going to restaurants, having fun. Now they're making bombs. Just a short time before joining you on air, Ben, I was walking around the city. I saw a group of college-age kids making not just Molotov cocktails, but large, looked like roadside bombs deployed against Russian forces. So as you said, we're far away necessarily from the front lines, although there were some attacks. The closest airstrike to this city about 12 miles away. And just yesterday, the mayor of this town said that a Russian air assault at an airfield an hour away was repelled with 60 Russian soldiers involved. Not sure how many were killed, but a number of them were fleeing to the woods. Because of the encroaching potential combat here in the city, that many people are leaving. And of course, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians are passing through here, scrambling to get west, the safe zone to the Polish border. So we went to a train station as well, Ben, and we found out that all the trains are sold out this week. In the past 24 hours, 120 Americans have left Ukraine, according to U.S. officials, a sign of the desperation many are feeling right now since the Russian invasion. And while it's notable the Russian tricolor flag has not been raised over any major city in this country, the students we're speaking to are very nervous. They feel like it's only a matter of time. And so for Russian forces, even though they haven't captured the city, they're trying. 2,000 Russian Marines now ashore near Mariupol, southeast Ukraine, and moving in on the city. Ukrainians are putting up a tough fight, no question, slowing the Russian advance. In fact, the U.S. officials say the Russians aren't nearly as far along on day 4 of this operation as they would have liked. Now, the Russians, of course, are sending reinforcements. As I mentioned, 2,000 Russian Marines are ashore marching on Mariupol. You also have hardened Chechen fighters. Ukrainian forces earlier expelled Russian special forces from Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv, to the northeast. Now, it's growing concerns like that about these Russian units that are sending so many fleeing, and not just on the trains, but on the roadways as well. As you just saw that yesterday when we were heading in here. All Ukrainian women and children can flee, but military-aged males, 18 to 60, are forbidden from leaving the country because of President Zelensky's decree and mobilization for war. And Ukrainian leaders are feeling emboldened today after a speech by German Chancellor promising that boost defense spending, something many in the U.S. have wanted for years, and more importantly, for right now, this war, pledging to deliver 1,000 Javelin anti-tank missiles. These are fire-for-dead systems, unlike the TOW missiles, we have to drive them in there, the wire got it. These can fire and run, but of course the Russians will be shooting back, and we've seen devastating effects on the battlefield. Dozens of Russian tanks destroyed, according to Ukrainian officials, who say, by the way, over 4,000 Russian soldiers are killed. Now, many in the West think that total might be very high, but just shows the devastation and resistance that Russians are feeling, trying to evade the country people want to free. These weapons have been used to slow the Russian advance, including 500 Stinger anti-aircraft missiles that the Germans are also pledging. A number in this country are shooting down Russian gunships. 67 Russian gunships have been shot down on other areas. So very clear that the Russians are trying to gain foothold in air bases throughout the country, not just the one outside the capital, and in fact one southeast of here as well. Now, in a message to NATO, Vladimir Putin said today he's putting his secret forces on alert, as we just heard from Producer. Now, it's likely that U.S. forces will respond in kind as well, Ben. So far, no confirmation sitting there and carrying on business as usual. There's a low possibility rate. We could quite possibly have American pilots, bomber pilots also on more of an alert status. The Trump called it. Now, this dramatic increase in Section 4 the ground war. Now, it's another reason, people are just so nervous here, Ben. You know, walking around the city, people are scared, people are nervous. It's quite a change in support just a weekend ago. It's Sunday evening here, Ben. These kids here in this town are used to, carrying on as just, social capital, really, of this country, and they were not prepared for a ground war, and that's what many are doing right now, preparing for one. Yeah, and then when you turn here, there's another story, either uplifting or...
All right. I'm just testing out recording
with me here for the Lucas. Thanks very much. Ben? Fascinating.
from my house, which has got internet, to my playback server at Whoopa. Not doing too much outside of that. I'm just going to let it run for a while. So then I does tune into this. You can just watch me like you're watching paint dry.
In response to Putin's threat to put his nuclear forces on high alert, a senior U.S. defense official tells me, we believe this is an unnecessary step, an escalatory one, and could make things much, much more dangerous. We have no reason to believe, this official said, or doubt the validity of this order, but how it's manifested itself is not completely clear yet. Adding, we are confident we have the ability to defend the homeland, allies, and partners. Now, the statement by the president of Belarus, a country that Putin has essentially annexed without firing a shot, President Alexander Lukashenko, who is now essentially Putin's de facto vice president, issues the following threat and suggests he may allow Russia to place its nuclear weapons back in Belarus. He references the new sanctions announced by the White House in Europe. Quote, it's worse than war. Russia is being pushed towards a third world war. We should be very reserved and steer clear of it because nuclear war is the end of everything, Lukashenko said in a statement. Russian conventional forces, as you mentioned, and as Lucas mentioned, are facing stiff resistance like these Ukrainians using their bodies to block the Russian tanks. Russian forces have not taken any major cities yet, but after 4 days of fighting or achieved air superiority, we're told, they remain 30 kilometers outside the capital. No change in the past, or progress in the past 24 hours. They have faced fuel shortages that we've been reporting on, supply and logistics issues. Of particular concern, the town of Chernihiv, northeast of Kyiv, due east of Chernobyl, where it looks like Russian forces are preparing for a siege that would lead to many civilian deaths, we're told. U.S. officials have described the Ukrainian resistance as remarkably brave and heroic, as evidenced by these students singing the Ukrainian national anthem in the underground subway, now serving as a bomb shelter. poisonings and the assassinations of all of his opposition and his consolidation of power. In fact, today is the 7th anniversary of the assassination of Boris Nemtsov, his main opposition leader, just outside the Kremlin. It's fascinating, and we thank you for all of your expertise and your hard work. I know you haven't had much of a break, and we appreciate it. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you. Ben.
Thanks. Well, the growing humanitarian crisis in Ukraine, where thousands of citizens are seeking shelter, many of them young children, this is officers just say they could soon run out of food. What you can do to help, coming up next.
This is why you want farmers claim forgiveness. Your home premium won't go up just because of this.
Oh, it's okay.
Get a whole lot of something with farmers policy first. We are farmers.
What's my safe light story? I see inspiration right through my glass. So when my windshield cracked, I chose Safe Light. They replaced the glass and recalibrated my safety system. That service I can trust.
My name's Diane. I'm an avid gardener. I grow lots of pretty flowers. I've learned how to make flower arrangements. I like to give them to people that need a little cheering up or need a little lift, just to brighten the day. It's just like a little bowl of sunshine, to deliver a flower arrangement. Well, I want to stop now and keep with that as long as I can. At a point in my life not too long ago, I was thinking I could never garden again. It was discouraging. But then I found balance of nature. And it's just been a no-brainer ever since. I feel great. I have plenty of energy. I sleep well at night. I can lift anything I want to lift. Our bodies need nutrients. We haven't had yet. We don't have them to suffer. At my age, I've got to understand that. So, with balance of nature, I can work just as hard and as long as I really want to. It's just been a godsend. Start now by going to balanceofnature.com and don't forget to use discount code FOXNEWS.
It's my 310, no insulin site, migraine medicine. It's Ubrelvy. For any time, anywhere migraine strikes, without worrying that it's too late or where I am. One that can quickly stop my migraine in its tracks within 2 hours. Unlike older medicine, Ubrelvy is a pill that directly blocks the URP protein, so we can cause of migraine. Do not take this drops to treat foreign inhibitors. Most common side effects are nausea and headache. Ask about Ubrelvy and learn how to become simple. 5 billion people.
Gonna download some pinball tables.
Thousands of children are suffering and dying from treatable causes. For 40 years, Mercy Ships has deployed 20 hospitals to provide free surgeries these children need. Join us. Together, we can give children the hope and healing they never thought possible. It's a mission powered by love, made possible by us. Give today. No matter where you live, the Dish is 99% signal reliability.
Okay, everybody, let's get to the basement. Abby, Austin, hurry.
We're all here.
99% signal reliability here in the country.
New projects means new project managers. You need to hire. Indeed you do. When you sponsor a job, you immediately get your short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job criteria. Visit Indeed.com/hire. Get started today.
We need a small business fast.
People spend days and nights in the shelters. They
children and the babies in their care. Ron Davis joining us now live from Ukraine. Mark, thanks for joining us today. Thank you for what you do. And what can you explain to us, paint a picture of what your orphanage is going through at the moment?
It's horrendous. We never imagined such incredible ordeal to have to go through. Right now, both of the orphanages that we support, I've been doing this for a decade here, are in war combat zones. Kherson and Mykolaiv. It's in that half of Crimea and Odessa. And the Ukrainians have been holding off the Russians in Mykolaiv. Crimea's already been Kherson's already been taken over. So what's had to happen that's terrifying is these children have to go to storm shelters. I was there yesterday in the orphanage in Mykolaiv and watching the nurses rushing as the silent squad carrying babies down there. And keep in mind that 30 children with special needs, handicapped, Down syndrome kids, and then this cramped facility, trying to keep kids happy for hours on end is horrific. But what really has got my attention now, if I can share, go ahead.
Now, we go on very quickly. How old are the children? How the children are coping at the moment?
Thank you for asking. That's a great question. I've always dealt with just the newborn to 4-year-old. From 5 and up, they go to another orphanage or schooling. And so the crisis hasn't been about the noise of these things. The children can't understand bombs any more than if they hear thunder or lightning outside. But what they really get involved with the fright, the scare of, is simply being moved. Why are they being moved from their care and nursing? So we've been assured by the doctor who runs the facilities they're going to care for kids psychologically as well. But the nurses also have to keep their head on, have to be calm in the middle of all of this so they can be comforting for the children. So it's a heroic effort by everyone.
Those images that you've shown really are staggering. They're heartbreaking. As you say, you only have food for a few weeks. Your website is at the bottom of the screen there, and anyone at home can reach out and help support those children. But I think the only thing that will help them now is the end of this war. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for all you do, and all the best to you and the children. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, please understand, we're trying to network the whole country. So please, you're giving, we're able to use it here and spend to buy food. We just got there. The orphanage here ended up having 1 week's food left. We don't know what's in the rest of the country. So your giving does go directly here at abundanceinternational.org. But also, if you can, if you know an American or Western person living here in Ukraine, I want to know who they are, if they're trustworthy, because we're trying to then give help to all the orphanages with people we can send money to. So just at Mark at abundanceinternational.org or give. Thank you for taking those extra seconds to share that.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on, Mark. We appreciate it.
And an important message indeed from Mark there. Vladimir Putin putting his nuclear forces on alert as Moscow faces growing pushback over its invasion of Ukraine. How the U.S. is responding to that new escalation and what it could mean for NATO. We'll be right back.
We help open doors for our 12 million customers every day. Doors that create opportunities. Go today and tomorrow. Doors that let our 9,000 associates guide them to retirement. Doors that lead them toward their financial goals by trusting us with one trade assets. We're empowered and we're ready to take this door through.
This is exactly why we chose to use Program for Motor Retail Care. My mother needed so long. We did climb up on the street.
Lifesaver. The e-filter installation process is so simple and easy.
The sales and needless interest-free financing and the price was right was a no-brainer.
Our job falls full free. My home is better protected. Thank you, e-filter.
Oh, this is featuring e-filter for digital.com. Free better protection than ever. Call or log on today and save 15%.
To be a thriver with metastatic breast cancer means asking for what you want and need, and we need more time. So we want Kisqali. Women are living longer than ever before with Kisqali. Taken with an aromatase inhibitor or fulvestrant in postmenopausal women with HR-positive, HER2-negative metastatic breast cancer. Kisqali is a pill that's significantly more effective at delaying disease progression versus an aromatase inhibitor or fulvestrant. Kisqali can cause uncontrolled or an abnormal heart rate, which can lead to death. dizziness, yellowing of the skin or eyes, drudgery, tiredness, loss of appetite, abdomen pain, bleeding, bruising, fever, chills, or other symptoms of infection, a severe or worsening rash, are or threat to become pregnant or breastfeeding. Avoid premature surgeries. Ask your doctor about living normal to choose to spell.
The war in Ukraine. The latest on the crisis and the full impact. Ramirez inside an analysis you can't miss on Fox News Live today. Part of our continued coverage.
The idea of having to face death again must be what sounds revenge. Has been haunted his whole life by whatever came around the world that night.
Went to my Safe Life story? I see inspiration right through my glass. So when my windshield cracked, I chose Safe Life.
With WW, I lost 30 pounds and I feel incredible. I love the new program because the app does all the work for you. It's never too late to start. Get your first 3 months free at WW.com. Hurry, offer ends February 28th.
It can be easy to steal your identity. Now, it can be just as easy to help protect yourself. LifeLock helps detect identity threats. If there's a problem, we want to fix it. Go to lifelock.com.
With the timeless protection of ADT, it's safe to say,
The loss of my
or it's safe to say,
You're all set.
it's even safe to say,
We're here paying 20%.
with amazing employees like these, it's safe to say, nobody has more experience helping keep you safe than ADT.
Every 3 minutes, a child is born with a cleft condition. Without surgery, some will die. Those who do survive face extreme challenges. Operation Smile works to heal children born with cleft conditions. We need you. There are still millions in dire need of healing. Go to operationsmile.org today and become a monthly supporter or call 1-833-811-9376.
With thyroid eye disease, my whole world became about my eyes. I hate microchipping, and double vision made things look like this. But then my doctor recommended Tepezza, a prescription medicine that treats thyroid eye disease. With my symptoms under control, things are really opening up.
In a clinical study, nearly 7 out of 10 patients taking Tepezza saw improvements in double vision, and more than 8 out of 10 patients had less thyroid damage. Tepezza is an infused medicine. Patients taking Tepezza may experience infusion reactions. Tell your doctor right away if you have symptoms such as high blood pressure, fast heartbeat, shortness of breath, or muscle pain. Before receiving Tepezza, tell your doctor if you have diabetes, inflammatory bowel disease, or IBD, or are pregnant or planning to become pregnant. Tepezza may raise your blood sugar even if you do not have diabetes, and may worsen IBD such as Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis.
My world is more than just my eyes.
Ask your doctor about Tepezza and visit mytepezza.com to see Jeannie's before and after photos.
I have to try.
Well, Dana, that's all from us here in the booth. It's been a great pleasure to be with you. And I sort of end with a word of caution, which is that although Putin has suffered a few setbacks on the battlefield, now is the time when it could lead to serious escalation, as he lashed out. So I think the next few days are going to be absolutely critical. We'll be here covering all of that for our viewers. So Dana, thanks very much for today, and we look forward to next time.
You brought us some excellent stories of people there on the ground and those who are trying to flee, and so we will continue to have more of that all week with you, and I've appreciated the time with you today. Our coverage continues. Brett Baer picks up our continuing special live coverage of the war in Ukraine.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered the country's nuclear forces to be put on high alert as strong resistance from the Ukrainians slow Russian forces in Ukraine to a crawl. This as Ukrainian President Zelensky prepares for talks with Russia, and President Biden readies his first State of the Union address. Welcome to Washington and to Fox News Live. I'm Brett Baer. We have Fox Team coverage with Peter Doocy at the White House, Jennifer Griffin live from the Pentagon, Lucas Tomlinson in Lviv, Ukraine. But we start with Trey Yingst on the ground in Kyiv, where Ukrainian troops are fiercely defending their homeland against Russian invaders. Trey.
Right, good evening. Air raid sirens sounded once again just moments ago here in the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv as troops and civilians alike tried to push back this Russian offensive. Some ominous words from the mayor of Kyiv tonight saying that evacuations are no longer possible. He said people will have to stay put and fight back against the Russians. Moving forward, the critical part for this city will be the continued support of the international community. They are looking not only here in the capital, but across the country for tougher sanctions on Russia and also defensive weapons in the form of anti-tank missiles and anti-aircraft batteries. Just yesterday, a Russian missile slammed into an apartment building here, killing at least 2 people. And overnight, an oil depot south of the city was hit also with a Russian missile. Officials are warning civilians who cannot fight to stay underground in bomb shelters. Those who can are making Molotov cocktails, picking up weapons from local police departments, loading them, and preparing for war. Right?
Trey, so far you've heard, what, small arms fire? Have there been big explosions in and around Kyiv tonight?
Tonight we've heard explosions, small arms fire, and those air raid sirens going off. The Russians clearly trying to choke off this city from both the air and the ground. The mayor again warning people that evacuations are no longer possible. He describes it as Kyiv being surrounded by the Russian forces. We do know there will be offensives by these Russian troops as they plan to try to take over the capital city. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky reportedly still in Kyiv. He is vowing to fight the Russians, stay here like many members of parliament, loading their weapons and preparing to fight.
And Trey, what do the streets look like? Are there people out on the streets? Do they all go to the bunkers or the underground during this time of the night, or what does it look like today?
Right now, the entire country is under martial law, and the city of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, currently is under curfew until Monday morning at 8 a.m. We do expect that to be extended as they want to keep people off the streets. Ukrainian defense officials are warning that Russian troops can disguise themselves as saboteurs and ultimately engage not only the civilian population, but those troops that are stationed throughout the city. We have seen, just by looking off the balcony here, we can't go very far from this location as that martial law curfew remains in effect. But trucks and barricades trying to block off some of the key arteries into this city. They want to make sure if those Russian tanks start to roll through Kyiv, they'll be slowed down and give the civilians and troops a chance to fight back.
Well, listen, you guys stay safe. We'll check in with you later. Trey, thank you. We'll go to Lviv, Ukraine right now, where residents are preparing for war. Lucas Tomlinson is live on the ground there with the latest. Lucas. Lucas, can you hear me? Lucas Tomlinson in Lviv.
Right a week ago, college kids in this university town were having fun. They were out. They didn't think the Russians were coming. Today, they're making bombs. We saw these college kids earlier today go along the street making what looked like Molotov cocktails, but larger homemade bombs, perhaps roadside bombs, to save some of these Russian armored units and some of these tanks that have been rolling into this country. Now, because of this, many people here in this country are very nervous. Of course, many are fleeing. That's why hundreds of thousands are making their way out of the capital, about 6 hours to the east, where Trey was just reporting, moving their way towards Lviv here, about 40 miles from the Polish border. In the past 24 hours, about 120 Americans have left Ukraine, according to U.S. officials, a sign of desperation that we feel right now since the Russian invasion began early Thursday morning. It's notable, Brett, the Russian tricolor flag has not been raised over any major city in this country. Students I've spoken to today are very nervous. They feel like it's only a matter of time. The Russians are trying. 2,000 Russian Marines just landed and are now ashore near Mariupol in southeast Ukraine and are moving on that city. Ukrainians are putting up a fierce fight. Many worry reinforcements like this will present challenges, along with the battle-hardened Chechen fighters that are also on their way in. Now, earlier Ukrainian forces expelled Russian special forces from Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv, in the northeast, a major victory for the Ukrainian forces. It's a growing concerns like this that are sending many people fleeing. The roads are just as packed as the trains here, and only Ukrainian women and children can flee this country. All military-aged males aged 18 to 60 are forbidden from leaving the country because of President Zelensky's decree and mobilization for war. And Ukrainian leaders are feeling bold today after a speech by German Chancellor promising to boost defense spending, something many in the U.S. have wanted for years. More importantly, for Ukrainians fighting fiercely on the ground, the Germans are promising 1,000 Javelin anti-tank missiles and 500 Stinger anti-aircraft missiles to shoot down those Russian gunships. Those weapons have been used to slow down the Russian advance here on day 4 of Putin's war here in Ukraine. Now, in a message to NATO, Vladimir Putin said today he's putting his nuclear forces on high alert. It's likely U.S. forces will respond in kind. So far, no confirmation from the Pentagon. This is a dramatic increase in tensions on day 4 of the ground war. And much like in Kyiv, there's a curfew here in Lviv in western Ukraine. It goes into effect in the next hour through 6 a.m. local threat.
Lucas Tomlinson, live on the ground in Lviv. We'll check back in a bit. Lucas, thank you. Turning now to Washington, here the Biden administration working with their Western allies to respond to the escalation by Russia. Peter Doocy is live on the north lawn of the White House with that part of the story. Peter? President Biden is not here at the White House. He is at home in Delaware. We did just get this update, though, from an official who says President Biden has been speaking with his national security team regularly today to receive updates on Russia and Ukraine. And we know that his team has been monitoring those reports that Russia put their nuclear readiness, that Russia elevated their nuclear readiness.
First of all, George, this is really a pattern that we've seen from President Putin through the course of this conflict, which is manufacturing threats that don't exist in order to justify further aggression. And the global community and the American people should look at it through that prism.
And now a White House official is directing me to this statement the Russians signed on to in January. It says, "We affirm that a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. If not nuclear, though, there is some growing concern that Putin could turn to chemical weapons."
Certainly, nothing is off the table with this guy. He's willing to use whatever tools he can to intimidate Ukrainians and the world. And again, we have to continue, as the president has indicated, to hold him accountable. And that is exactly what we're doing here in New York.
And now some lawmakers are wondering whether or not Putin has seen anything in the first few days of this invasion that makes him want to pull back a little bit as these peace talks are set to start on Ukraine's borders.
As for the prospects of the discussions at the border, look, I hope and I believe that Putin may well finally recognize that he made a huge error, that he was badly miscalculated how hard the people of Ukraine would fight, and the nature of the world's response. In this modern world, with war being conducted and people filming it and passing it around the world,
it's pretty quiet here at the White House today with the president out of town. We understand that he is right now attending the memorial service for a relative who recently passed away at a country club close to home there. Right? And Peter, we heard from the president earlier this week that he has no plans to talk with Vladimir Putin in that press back and forth that you were a part of. But is there a sense inside the administration that there is any kind of back channel with the Russians? There's all this talk about how Putin is a different person. Is there any communication on any level, do we think, with the Russians? Well, there's a lot of communication, Brett, and it's not all back channels. I was talking to Jen Psaki about this the other day. They think that there are issues outside of Ukraine that are of such great national security interest to the U.S. that they need to team up with the Russians, like the Iran nuclear talks. We are on the same side of those negotiations as the Russians, and that is not going to change anytime soon. I mean, the disconnect between talking about him possibly using chemical weapons or mobilizing a nuclear force and then sitting down at the table to get an Iran nuclear deal through is pretty stark. And just from a practical perspective, you got to think that it's kind of awkward for these diplomats whose leaders are having a war of words. But Joe Biden is saying that Vladimir Putin is going to be a pariah on the world stage. He's saying that he's trying to recreate the Soviet Union. He's saying that he has naked ambition with concerns to his invasion plan. And then the diplomats just had to go and kind of figure things out like that's not happening. Yeah. Well, we'll follow that. That's a serious disconnect. Here's Ron Long. Thanks. Now for reaction from the Defense Department and how the situation on the ground in Ukraine is unfolding. Our national security reporter, correspondent Jimmy Griffin from the Pentagon. Jim.
Brett, I can tell you from the Pentagon's point of view, there is no contact, and there has not been any contact with their Russian counterparts. So those conversations, there is not a discussion with the back panel between the defense secretary and others. We asked about that this morning. Today is the 7th anniversary of the assassination of Putin's main opposition leader, Boris Nemtsov. He was gunned down on a bridge leading to the Kremlin 7 years ago today, February 27th. Russians are laying flowers on the bridge where he was killed in the eyesight of the Kremlin. Tons of flowers and more messages, no to war, and active defiance by Russian people who could be arrested for protesting the war in Ukraine. Intelligence analysts think that Putin is attempting to escalate tells me this could make things much more dangerous. They have no reason to doubt what he says he plans to do. The president of Belarus, who's his vassal, says the new sanctions from the U.S. and the EU are pushing Russia to a third world war. Russian conventional forces are facing stiff resistance, like these Ukrainians using their bodies to block a Russian tank. Russian forces have not taken any major cities yet or achieved air superiority. They remain 30 kilometers outside the capital, no change in the past 24 hours. They have faced fuel shortages, supply and logistics issues. Of particular concern, the town of Chernihiv, northeast of Kyiv, due east